You know them from the 90s, when these icons were just getting started.
Those were the 90s.
Singer-songwriter Lisa Loeb wants to know where they are now, as she catches up with guests you may have met in the 90s, but the work didn't stop in 1999.
Where They Are Now with Lisa Loeb
On 90s on 9.
I'm Lisa Loeb, and this is Where They Are Now, my podcast where I talk to folks you may have first gotten to know in the 90s, but we're all interested to know more about what they're up to now. Today, I'm so thrilled to welcome the band Sublime With Rome to Where They Are Now. Sublime defined that ska, alt-rock California sound in the 90s with hits like Santeria and What I Got. Then in 2009, Rome Ramirez joined the band, and they became Sublime With Rome. They've released 3 studio albums, Yours Truly, Sirens, and Blessings, and are currently on tour and set to release a 4th record soon. Their new single, Cool and Collected, featuring Slightly Stupid, is out now. Welcome, Rome Ramirez of Sublime With Rome.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
I'm such a big fan of the music, you know, the classic songs from the 90s. We listen to a lot over here at my house. And then the newer songs, it all really works well together. You know, I've heard you tell this story before, but I really want you to tell it because I think it's such a great, it's such an inspiring story to people who have a dream and people who, well, it's a special story. I want to know how you ended up joining this band and creating Sublime With Rome.
Well, let me start by saying that it all started just as a huge fan. Being 12 years old and discovering the music while vacationing in San Diego with my family. Maybe it was also being in the atmosphere while listening and discovering the music, but I mean, it hooked me immediately. And I knew shortly after listening to Sublime that was something that I really wanted to, I wanted to be a musician so I can learn how to play that music.
And you were a little kid, right?
Yeah, I was 12 years old when I first heard Sublime. Wow. And that year, 12 years old, I remember asking my folks for a guitar so I could, learn one of the songs. And that kind of immediately changed my life. It really did. And growing up, I tried and form my, little versions of like Sublime inspired bands that can never really get off the ground. And then I decided to pack my bags and move to Los Angeles. Story is as old as time itself.
Yeah, but that's a big move. Like LA is a big city with a lot going on.
It eats you up too. It don't matter if you're even coming from like West Covina or something. Like you move to Los Angeles, and it's a big city, and it moves fast, and it's not kind if you're not strong, and or at least if you don't know how to put up some punches. So. But it was great. I moved out there. I didn't know anybody. And then I just started networking and playing every show I could possibly find. And through that, eventually I met some people who were good friends with Eric Wilson, the bass player of Sublime. And when they told me that they knew him, actually, I went to their studio and I saw that they had a plaque, a gold record plaque for a self-titled album, which has like all the Sublime's really big hits on it, like Santeria and What I Got. And as soon as I walked in there and I saw that, I was like, oh man, I must be in the right place. This is a sign from God. And but they were really cool. They were really kind people. Shout out to Louis Richards in Costa Mesa. He was really kind. He took me under his wing and listened to me sing and liked my music, and eventually introduced me to Eric. And I got to meet Eric and start hanging out with him really naturally and just as a big fan. I mean, I remember the first time he ever came into the studio, I was just flabbergasted that he was like walking through the doors, and, he pulls up in like this G-Wagon and he's smoking a big old joint. And I was just like, this guy's like a rock star. And he was like really cool and quiet. Eric's a quiet guy, but really kind and humble, you could tell. And I was just a big fan. I didn't try and, oh, dude, I'm like your biggest fan. I was like really cool, really, cool and collected. And
it's fine. It's hard finding that balance sometimes when you meet somebody you're such a big fan of. That happens to me all the time. I remember when I met Paul Rubens, Pee Wee Herman, who passed away recently. I was trying to be cool because he was friends with my friends, but I was such a huge fan. And I wanted to be, I wanted to continue to be a fan of his, but I also became friendly with him. And it's an interesting balance when you're still a fan, but you're also a friend.
I have a lot of admiration. Yeah, I just met Jack Johnson last weekend, so I know exactly what you're talking about. And I failed that. I was like a puddle. I was like, dude, I love you so much. You're like my favorite. But anyway, so with Eric though, I was able to keep my composure a little better, and then we just remained, friends, and he would throw these crazy parties, and I'd go over to his parties, and he'd be like, "Hey man, you want to play a Sublime song with me?" And I'd be like, "Dude, of course." And so we started playing these Sublime songs around town in Long Beach at his house parties. No big deal, huge deal with me. And
what year was this? Around what time?
2007.
2007. Okay.
Yeah. And we did it for about a year, and all the meanwhile I was like building up my solo stuff and playing shows and writing songs.
And were you working in the studio then also?
Yeah.
I know you would come to LA also to go to school, right?
Yeah, I came down to LA to study to become like an audio engineer. I wanted like a certification in Pro Tools so then I could get a job at a studio and then just kind of bug people that I worked with. That was like the plan,
Yeah.
But I got fast tracked when I met Eric. And so I started jamming with Eric a bunch. And after a while, we were playing a lot of Sublime songs at his parties, and we got approached by like a manager who used to know Eric from back in the day. And, he talked to Eric from what they tell me and was like, "Hey, what you think about reuniting Sublime with the kid?" I think I was like 18 at the time.
Oh my gosh.
Eric was like, "Dude, I was thinking the same thing." So they called me up one day. Both of them were sitting down, and they called me up to our manager's house, our soon-to-be manager's house, and they asked me if I would be interested in singing for Sublime, just outright, And
Gosh.
I mean, I was just like, how do you answer that? Like so many things running through my head. I mean, they say like your life flashes before your eyes. Well, you kind of have to think about that right then and there. But I've never been that, calculated. So I just like, this sounds fun. Hell yeah, let's go. So I said, yeah, let's do it. Sounds fun. So after that, the next order of business was to go and meet the drummer of Sublime because I hadn't met him yet. And to my knowledge, they hadn't talked in close to 10 years.
Wow.
So yeah, we went up there and knocked on his door and I said, "Hey, I'm that guy." And he's like, "Cool, band room's upstairs." And then we started practicing, and then it felt right. I think they felt good enough for them to want to put the band back.
And it's so cool because it sounds like Sublime, but it sounds like you, but it has like the essence, and the songs are so great. And then you guys took that and you have made new records over the last many years now.
Yeah.
It's been happening for a while now. You're a grown up now, right?
Crazy. Yeah, I'm 35. I have 3 children of my own.
How old are your kids?
6, 4, and 2.
Oh my gosh, you're in the middle. I've got a little bit older kids. My kids are 13 and 11, and it's interesting balancing, being a parent and being a musician, and you guys tour a good amount. That's an interesting balance. But wait, I want to go back to the music for a second. How, over the last few albums, what has that progression been like? What has that been like for you to make those albums? I'm also I love that the record, Blessings, it's just, you've got this like ska, punky whole thing going on, the sound, but it's got a very positive feeling,
Oh,
it's got a very positive feeling. I can tell from, hearing some of your interviews and listening to the music, there's just this great positivity that comes across. Like, I'm curious how you approach how you've made those albums and what's the progress been, between each album. Do you approach them all differently, or how's that been for you?
Well, thank you for the nice words. I mean, that really does mean a lot. You just write the songs and hope that they resonate with people. Especially, underneath the shadow of something so incredible like Sublime, the goal is never to overpower, just to anything, even just be something that is like, of value, of worth, to be sitting next to something as, wonderful as Sublime is. And honestly,
No pun intended. It's called Sublime.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
As sublime as it is. It comes from just me literally just being a fan. I mean, they really are like my favorite band. I knew everything about them before I was even with them. I mean, when we were rehearsing, I would kind of have to bite my tongue, but I'd be like, "I think you guys missed a chord there. I think it goes over here." Just stuff like that where, I was the guy for the job. But over the course of time, it's allowed me to, really see the world literally travel the world and see other people and meet people that are far more talented than me and see where they've gotten in their lives and how lucky I am. And that's why I titled the record Blessings, is because everything that we have in our life, speaking for, my bandmates and I, it's an absolute blessing to anybody who's a musician. If they truly love what they do, they will tell you that, it is a blessing to be doing what they're doing. They may word it differently, but the analogy will be the same. And that's I think every year that we can like get together to make music, it's a more active representation of, us kind of getting to that place of gratitude and that place of, respecting the struggles and the pain, being able to reflect on it, but not having to live in it anymore.
You're very philosophical, which I really love. And it's so important too, as a dad, for young children, bringing them up, to be able to express that. Where did you get that from? Is that something you've always had, or is that something you were taught growing up? Your perspective on life?
Well, I had a really shitty childhood. And I don't think it's that bad. My wife tells me all the time, no, babe, it was a really bad childhood. But when you're growing up in it, you're fighting your way through it. But, and it's taught me a lot. And I lost my father to drugs for a good portion of my life, for about 20 years of my life. And then after I had already, made something of myself, he came back into my life and completely changed himself. And that took me some time to kind of see that. But through life, I've learned what happens when you focus on what it is that you're truly passionate about, and then you forgive people, and then let people live through their own mistakes, and understand that you can't control people or things, and just do your best. And it's very cliche, and I didn't invent this or nothing, but I am a subscriber to that mindset, and I have been intentionally since I was a kid, because I had to get out of where I was at. So I had to be my own guru, I've always kind of been that person. It's I don't know, maybe that's the way God made me or something, but that's kind of been one of my big things that I love about myself, is I love how optimistic I have always been since I was very young. I've always been the one that just kind of rallied the troops and been like, I think we can climb that fence. Let's check it out.
That's pretty amazing. When I started writing music when I was a kid, and as a singer-songwriter, when I was about your age, when you sort of met up with Eric, when you were a young teenager, I was writing songs, and at the end of through high school and college, a lot of love songs and broken heart songs and some punky songs, all different kinds of songs. But it wasn't until I started making music for children, I make children's music as well, and also collaborating with others. When you collaborate with others, you actually have to discuss, what are you going to talk about? It can't just be this abstract thing coming out of your head. You're actually trying to build the same house. It's and you end up writing songs sometimes with more of messages, and that's a real skill to be able to. It's something I'm continually working on, but you end up wanting to give messages, and you do that through your songs. You do that through your songs. They're just songs, when you listen to them, you don't feel like you're being preached to or anything like that. But that's kind of like this added bonus. No, but that's like an added bonus, because the energy of what you do, the sound of what you do, and then the actual words, I feel like they have that essence, which is pretty cool.
Real quick, let me just talk on that. Just for anybody listening, like you just said, when you were younger and you were you wrote a lot about love and relationships. I did too. It took me a while to be able to find the confidence to talk about this stuff and to even put it out into the world. A lot of my first songs, even the first album, if you listen to from Sublime, even a lot of the second one from Sublime With Rome, they're just me stringing along syllables and maybe a couple of lighthearted messages here and there coming in, but they weren't, they weren't brave by any means from my perspective. It took time to kind of become the writer where I could be honest, and I still struggle every day to try and be better at that. But it definitely, you didn't come out the gate being I'm such I'm this writer. I came out writing terrible songs for sure.
But that's exciting too, because you're talking about the blessing of being a musician. I know for me, when you say that, I think of not only being, there's so many different levels, to be a performing live, what that feels like, to be in front of people. There's just this closed, there's this loop of energy between yourself and the audience.
Yeah.
There's literally us getting to talk to each other, getting to sit on an airplane next to somebody that you might never meet before, somebody's grandmother, or, the people that you meet, the magic of going in a room and creating something, whether anybody ever hears it or not.
Yeah.
Like, there's so many different levels to be able to make a living doing it is pretty cool. So I want to ask you about the newer song you have with Slightly Stupid. Slightly Stupid is another band. Yeah. And are those folks that you've been friends with for a long time, or what's your relationship there?
Sublime and Slightly Stupid have a really long history together. They, I think there's something like they kind of put the band on the map back in the day when of the last years that Brad was around, he had discovered the band and really liked them when they were kids, and kind of like took them under their wing, so to speak. And then ultimately Bradley passed, so. But that band, Slightly Stupid, kind of continued on and just, kind of, for lack of better words, kind of kept the movement going, to be honest. And Sublime With Rome, this was our first time ever touring with them, partly because, they do really well for themselves as well. So, it's been tricky for both management companies to kind of be able to figure out that package where everybody is, happy.
Yes.
But they did, nonetheless. They figured it out. And, life is short. So, I think the older you get to, the more you realize that it's more about the experience. And dude, we had a great time. But we'll get to that. The song came together very, very, very organically. I wished all music would come together this organically, especially features. But I was walking backstage at Cali Vibes Festival. It's a huge reggae festival in California, 40,000 people. And we're walking backstage, and I bump into one of the singers of the band, Miles. And he's like, dude, we're going on tour this summer. And I'm like, yeah, I just heard about that. It's going to be really awesome. He's like, totally. We should get in the studio and put together a song that we could perform every night. And I was like, well, that's a great idea, because tomorrow morning I fly to Texas to record our new album. So I could totally make that happen. It couldn't happen at a more better time. And I need songs. So this is great. So I get to Texas, I get set up, and I start working on this little idea.
Where in Texas, by the way? I'm from Dallas.
We go to this little town called Tornillo, Texas. It's outside of El Paso.
Okay, my brother lived in El Paso for a while.
Okay, I'm sure he's heard of Sonic Ranch.
Yeah.
It's a world famous studio. It's called Sonic Ranch.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, really great studio. It's out in the middle of nowhere. We choose to record there. I'm doing another record for another artist there in February. I love it there. So I'm out there, I put together some ideas and I send it over to Miles, hoping that he would like it. And they love it. They're like, oh my God, we love it. We already dropped some stuff to it. We'll send it over, see what you'd think. And I loved it. And then we just buttoned it up in like 2 days. And that was it. And then we uploaded it that week. And I mean, never in my life in this side of the fence, when you're like an independent musician and you don't have like a big team and all that, you can like make moves and upload stuff. But when you got like managers and labels and agents,
I know it can take years.
Bureaucracy, baby. So it's like, oh God. So this stuff, when it happens, it's so freaking fun, and it reminds me of being like a kid again. So yeah, it happened, and it came out, and the fans loved it, and we played it every single night. And the song just broke like 1.5 million streams on all platforms, and yeah, we're excited.
That's awesome. So I was just curious, also. Did you actually get to work with Lana Del Rey on the cover of Doing Time, or is that something she did on her own?
No, that was something that her and awesome producer, killer producer, drawing a blank on his name, but he had Bud and Eric, the bass player and the drummer for Sublime, the original members of the band. He had them play on the record, which is pretty cool. I don't think a lot of people know that, but
yeah, that's super cool. Okay,
he got access to like the stems and everything and all the.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's really cool.
Oh, no wonder it sounds like it has a familiar sound. But it's cool to hear somebody else's interpretation of the song. So
that song went #1. So like it did it again. How cool is that?
Well, there's something about the songs that it makes you feel. I don't know, like, again, like I listened to Santeria is a really big song in our house especially with my 11-year-old son for years. And when you listen to it, you kind of have that feeling of like just walking down the street, everything's going to be okay.
Yeah. It's timeless music.
It's timeless. There's an energy in it. And you feel like you don't have a lot of responsibilities, which is nice. That's my own interpretation. That's how I feel when I listen to it in the car. But so wait, what have you guys? You have some tour dates still coming up? A few more tour dates coming up?
Yeah, we have a couple of just like one-offs and stuff, and yeah, we got a lot of music coming, a lot of
Wow,
stuff.
that's so cool. How is it? Do you think the '90s versus now? Like, you came in the 2000s, but as a kid you were listening to music in the '90s.
Mhm.
Have things, do you think, changed a lot? Like, I keep thinking about because you're such a fan and a musician as well, like the social media aspect. Do you like that side of it as a musician? Like, what do you think?
Well, I mean, I could see how it could be unhealthy, but I am a product of that. I was 12 years old when we had an internet connection in the house, and I was watching YouTube videos of how to record myself by the time I was 13. So it was
Yeah.
like, without MySpace and me being able to talk to fans and upload and get feedback and build a community, and I don't even think I would have been prepared for when Eric and Bud found me, I, yeah, but it is very unhealthy, and it has gone to a point now where, it is, well, I want to choose my words wisely, but it's definitely at a point now where it can be unmanageable if you're not, responsible enough. It can really take you to the deepest edges of sanity. So, I do feel that social media is something that should be left to the individual and however much they want to use. There is no barometer.
I loved what you were saying about it, figuring it out for yourself. Sometimes I wish for my kids when they were little, especially like around your kids' age, I wish I could like hack an old TV with a VCR or like a disc that only had one or two or however, because we used to do like you could watch one show or two shows or
that's it.
like, but that was it. Like there was just a limit. It's like when you buy tiny bags of potato chips for yourself instead of the party bag, because you can eat one bag and you're like, okay, I had it, I'm good. You don't have to eat the whole bag. But like if you could do that with media, social media, I guess they do it with timers on they never work.
And I have youngins now, so the way I kind of see it is like there's no, if you look back over history, rarely ever has planet Earth, retracted from technology. We just learn how to better handle it and use it. And I think a lot of that will predominantly come from within the household and just how I bring my kids up,
Do they go on the road with you at all?
Yeah. They're still young too, though. They're like 6'4", like they won't remember shit. I'll barely get this at Disneyland yet, but
I know we didn't take our kids to Disneyland till they were much older.
Yeah,
I will say with my son, I feel like sometimes, even though he might not remember like certain beach trips and stuff like that, his body remembers. Like
it affects them.
It affects them, but it's also 3 kids. That's a lot for, that's a lot to take care of 3 kids far away. Where's the best place for people to find out where they can see you on tour, when the EP is coming out? What's the best place to go?
Honestly, probably like my Instagram. I like run both the accounts of the Instagram, so you can follow me at Rome Ramirez or at Sublime with Rome. But yeah, I mean, I'm always on there answering as many fans as possible, and just kind of like promoting shows and playing music. I like to make a lot of music content too, so I just put it up out there, and yeah, it's just fun.
So you're always making a lot of music. That's
I'm
so
always
cool.
making music. I'm always like recording other artists and producing and writing stuff. It's a blessing to be able to do this for a living, so I don't want to ever take it for granted.
That's super cool. Thank you so much, Rome from Sublime and Rome, for joining me on Where They Are Now. Check out sublimewithrome.com or at Rome Ramirez, social media for tour dates and other music coming up soon. I'm Lisa Loeb. Thanks so much for listening.
Later.
You're listening to SiriusXM On Demand.